Years ago, someone very close to me collapsed at his office. One minute he was sitting at his desk, answering emails. The next minute, he was on the floor, unable to speak, unable to move. The headaches he had been having for months, he thought they were just stress. The dizziness, probably just needed more sleep. For 6 months, his body had been screaming at him. And for 6 months, he ignored every single warning. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a medical degree. But that day changed everything for me. It changed how I see health, how I see warning signs. And it made me realize something absolutely terrifying. Most of us are walking around ignoring the same signals. So I started researching, reading medical journals, talking to doctors, understanding what our bodies are desperately trying to tell us. Today, I want to share a story with you. I've changed the name to David. Some details are fictionalized to protect privacy. But this is based on real medical cases, including what happened to someone I love. And if you're watching this right now with a headache you've been ignoring, this story might just save your life. Here is what happened when David finally stopped ignoring the whispers.
David Morrison lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Columbus, Ohio. 38 years old. A devoted husband to Sarah. A proud father to 2 kids, Emma, age 10, and Jake, age 7. He was the kind of man who believed that taking care of his family meant putting himself last. That responsibility always came before comfort. Every single morning followed the exact same routine. The alarm would pierce the silence at 5:45 a.m. David would roll out of bed, careful not to wake Sarah. A quick shower. Black coffee instead of breakfast. Then out the door before the sun even thought about rising. But some mornings, something different happened. As David stood at the bathroom mirror, shaving, a dull pressure would settle behind his eyes, like someone was pressing their thumbs into his temples from the inside. Not sharp enough to make him stop. Not unbearable enough to worry about. Just there. David would stare at his reflection, rub his temples for a few seconds, and tell himself the same thing he always did. It's nothing. Just stress. Just another long week ahead. Then he'd grab his keys and go. Because there was always somewhere to be. Always someone depending on him. Always something more important than a headache.
Now, here is what I learned from researching cases like David's. Our bodies don't lie to us. We lie to ourselves. We find reasons, excuses, explanations for everything. And David, he was the absolute king of excuses.
There was always a reason to explain it away. Stress from work. Not enough sleep. Too much screen time. Not drinking enough water. The list went on and on. David actually prided himself on this. On being tough. On pushing through discomfort. He had bills to pay every single month. Kids to raise and provide for. A family that depended on him to be strong. In David's mind, admitting something was wrong felt like weakness. Ignoring it, that felt like strength. So he'd swallow 2 painkillers with his morning coffee, grab his keys, and head to work. Most of David's day was spent sitting at a desk in a gray cubicle. Emails piled up faster than he could possibly answer them. Meetings blurred into one another until he couldn't remember what half of them were even about. Deadlines came at him in constant waves. By early afternoon, the headache would return, like clockwork. But this particular Tuesday, it brought something new. Something that made David's heart skip a beat. Dizziness. He was reading an email when the words on his computer screen suddenly blurred. Just for a second. Maybe two. David blinked hard. Once. Twice. Everything snapped back into focus. His heart was beating faster now. He could feel it pounding in his chest. That was strange, he thought. But then his phone buzzed on the desk. Another email. Another task. Another crisis that needed his immediate attention. And just like that, the moment passed. Because there was always something more urgent than how David felt. Always something more important than listening to his body.
I remember asking the person in my life, after everything happened, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you just get it checked? And you know what he told me? I didn't want to worry anyone. That answer broke my heart. Because that's exactly what David thought too. Watch what happened that evening.
On the drive home that evening, David couldn't stop replaying the moment. The dizziness. The blur. That split second when his vision just failed him. For just a moment, real fear crept in. Cold. Sharp. Undeniable. What if this isn't normal? The voice in his head whispered. But fear brought responsibility. And responsibility meant making doctor's appointments, taking time off work, running tests, getting answers. Answers he wasn't ready to hear. So David did what he always did, what he'd become an expert at doing. He pushed the thought down, deep down, where he wouldn't have to look at it. I'll rest this weekend, he told himself. I'll sleep in. It'll pass. It always passes. That evening, David sat at the dinner table with his family. Emma was talking excitedly about her science project. Jake was making airplane noises with his fork. Normal. Everything was completely normal. But Sarah was watching him. She'd been watching him for weeks now. And she'd noticed. You've been doing that a lot lately, she said gently. Her voice was soft, but there was concern underneath it. David looked up. Doing what? Rubbing your temples. The headaches. You've been having them almost every day now. David forced a smile, the kind he'd gotten good at. I'm fine, babe. Really, just work stress. You know how Jenkins has been breathing down my neck about the quarterly reports. Sarah wasn't convinced. He could see it in her eyes. Maybe you should check your blood pressure, she suggested. Your dad had issues with that, remember? Maybe you should just see a doctor, just to be safe. David actually laughed. Not a real laugh. A dismissive one. I'm 38 years old, Sarah. I'm too young to worry about stuff like that. That's old people problems. The conversation ended there. But later that night, when the house was completely silent, when Emma and Jake were asleep, when Sarah was breathing softly beside him in bed, the headache returned. Stronger than before. Much stronger. David lay there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, counting the shadows, listening to his own heartbeat, wondering.
Here is something that absolutely terrified me when I researched this. According to the American Heart Association, nearly half of all adults have high blood pressure. Half. And here's the part that kept me up at night. Many of them don't even know it. The CDC literally calls it the silent killer because it doesn't scream. It doesn't shout. it whispers. And David, he wasn't listening. Here's what happened next.
Over the next few weeks, the symptoms grew louder, much louder. The headaches lasted longer now. 3 hours, 4 hours, sometimes all day. The dizziness came without warning, without reason. David would be standing at the printer, and suddenly the room would tilt. He gripped the edge of his desk, waiting for the world to stop spinning. Sometimes, when he stood up too quickly, the entire room would spin violently, like he was on a boat in a storm. At work, focusing became harder and harder. Simple tasks that used to take minutes now took hours. Reading emails felt like decoding a foreign language. His coworkers started noticing. "You okay, man?" they'd ask. "You look pale." "I'm fine," David would say. Every single time. "Just tired." But he wasn't fine. Deep down, in a place he refused to acknowledge, David knew he wasn't fine. Yet he told no one. Not his wife. Not his doctor. Not even his best friend. Because admitting something was wrong felt like admitting failure. Like admitting weakness. Like admitting he couldn't handle it. And David had always been the dependable one. The strong one. The one who never complained. The one everyone could count on. Until one morning in early April. He didn't have a choice anymore. April 2nd, 10:43 in the morning. David stood up from his desk to grab a file from the cabinet. A simple movement. Something he'd done 1,000 times before. But this time, the world tilted. Instantly. Violently. His heart pounded in his chest like it was trying to escape. His vision darkened at the edges, like a tunnel closing in. He tried to speak, tried to call for help, but the words wouldn't come. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. His legs gave out completely, and David Morrison collapsed to the floor. The last thing he remembered was the sound of someone screaming his name. Then, nothing. Just darkness.
When I got the call about the person in my life, I was at work. I remember my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I wasn't just scared of what had happened. I was terrified of what could have happened. What if no one had been there? What if he had been driving? What if he had been alone with the kids? David woke up in a hospital bed 2 hours later. And what the doctors told him changed absolutely everything.
Soft fluorescent lights glowed above him. Machines beeped in steady rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. A doctor stood beside his bed. Older man. Kind eyes. But his expression was serious. Very serious. "Mr. Morrison," he said calmly, "you were in the hospital. You collapsed at work. Do you remember?" David tried to nod. His head felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "We've run some tests," the doctor continued. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high. Stage 2 hypertension. Your reading when you came in was 190/125. The numbers meant nothing to David in that moment. But then the doctor said something that cut through the fog. "Mr. Morrison, this didn't happen overnight. Your blood pressure has likely been climbing for months, possibly even years. The headaches you've been having, the dizziness, those weren't stress. They weren't fatigue." He paused. "They were warnings." Warnings. That word hit David like a physical blow. Your body has been trying to tell you something for a very long time, and you've been ignoring it. As David lay in that hospital bed, with machines beeping around him, with N4 in his arm, he felt something heavier than fear. Regret. Pure, crushing regret. He thought of every single headache he dismissed. Every time he'd said, "I'm fine," when he wasn't. Every warning sign he'd explained away. Every moment his body had screamed at him, and he'd just turned up the volume on his life to drown it out. His body had tried to protect him. It had tried to save him. And he just hadn't listened. That night, after Sarah finally went home to check on the kids and try to get some sleep, David lay alone in the darkness of the hospital room, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them, 42 tiles in perfect rows. He thought about every headache he'd swallowed a pill for instead of investigating, every dizzy spell he ignored, every moment his body had tried to start a conversation, and he'd simply refused to engage. Why? Because he was too busy? Because his family needed him? Because he thought he was being strong? The truth settled over David like a heavy blanket he couldn't push off. He hadn't been strong. He'd been terrified. So terrified of being sick that he'd almost let himself die. A single tear rolled down his temple. Then another. And David Morrison, the man who prided himself on never breaking, the man who was always strong for everyone else, finally broke, because he realized something that shook him to his core. He had almost left Emma and Jake without a father. He had almost left Sarah alone. He had almost thrown away everything, everyone he loved, all because he refused to listen, all because he was too afraid to face the truth. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is admit you need help. And David had learned that lesson almost too late.
This part of David's story, this is the part that stays with me. Not the collapse, not even the hospital, but the regret. The person I know told me something I'll never forget. He said, "I wasted so much time being afraid of the wrong thing. He was afraid of being sick, and he should have been afraid of ignoring it. But here's the thing. Here's what gives me hope. David got a second chance. Not everyone does."
3 days later, David was discharged from the hospital. He walked out with a bag full of new medications, new daily routines, new dietary restrictions, a completely new reality. As he and Sarah walked toward the car in the parking lot, she stopped him. Right there, in the middle of the parking lot. She put both hands on his face, gently, but firmly, made him look directly at her. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying for 3 days straight, but now they were fierce, determined. "Promise me something," she said. Her voice was steady, but underneath it, he could hear everything she wasn't saying. The fear, the anger, the relief, all of it. "Promise me you'll never ignore your body again. Promise me, David." David nodded. "I promise," he said quietly. But Sarah shook her head. "No, David. Look at me. Really promise me." And this time, when David said it, when he looked into his wife's eyes and said those words, he meant it with everything he had, because he'd learned something lying in that hospital bed, something most people don't learn until it's far too late. Your body doesn't betray you. It never has. It never will. Your body tries to save you. Every symptom is a message. Every ache is a warning. Every pain is a conversation your body is trying to have. And when you stop listening, when you ignore those messages, when you silence those warnings, you're not being strong. You're not being tough. You're being reckless with the only life you'll ever have.
So, what can we actually do with this information? What should you know? Look, I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose you. I can't tell you what's wrong. But I can share what I learned from researching this topic. What medical professionals actually recommend. What might, just might, save your life. Here's what you need to know.
High blood pressure is called the silent killer for one simple reason. It doesn't scream, it whispers, but early action can change absolutely everything. According to the American Heart Association, these simple steps can make a powerful difference. First, get regular blood pressure checks. Even if you feel completely fine, especially if you're over 30. Many pharmacies offer free screenings. Second, take recurring headaches seriously, especially if they're new or different from headaches you've had before. Third, manage stress instead of normalizing it. Chronic stress isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Fourth, prioritize sleep and proper hydration. Your body does most of its healing while you sleep. Fifth, reduce excessive caffeine and salt. Both can significantly raise blood pressure. And most importantly, seek medical advice when symptoms repeat. One headache isn't a crisis. Headaches every day for 2 weeks? That's your body trying to tell you something. Listen to it. Listening early doesn't mean panic. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means prevention. It means giving yourself the chance that David almost didn't get. The chance to be there for your family. The chance to watch your kids grow up. The chance to live.
Look, I know some of you are watching this right now thinking, this won't happen to me. I get it. I really do. I thought the exact same thing. Until it happened to someone I cared deeply about. Until I got that phone call. Until I sat in that hospital waiting room, not knowing if you'll be okay. David's story is fictionalized. The name is made up. Some details are changed for privacy. But the medical reality, that's real. The warning signs, those are real. The people ignoring them right now, at this very moment, they are real too. Maybe that's you. Maybe you've had a headache for 3 weeks straight. Maybe you felt dizzy a few times and brushed it off. Maybe you've told yourself, I'm too busy to deal with this right now. I'm not here to scare you. That's not what this is about. I'm here to remind you of something you already know deep down. Your body is trying to help you. It's not your enemy. It's not betraying you. It's literally trying to save your life. Listen to it. Not next month. Not after the holidays. Not when work calms down. This week, make the appointment. Get the checkup. Have the conversation. Because here's what I realized after almost losing someone I love. The people who love you, they need you here. They need you healthy. They need you alive. And that symptom you're ignoring right now, that headache, that dizziness, that pain, it might be trying to save your life. Don't wait until you are lying in a hospital bed, counting ceiling tiles, drowning in regrets. Listen now. I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose you. I can't fix you. But I can share these stories. Every single week, I research real medical cases and transform them into stories that stick with you. Stories that might save your life or someone you love. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about someone you care about, if it made you realize you've been ignoring something you shouldn't, share it. Share it with that person who never goes to the doctor. Share it with your dad who's too tough to complain. Share it with your friend who's always stressed but never does anything about it. And subscribe if you want more stories like this. Real medical cases, real warning signs, real information that could genuinely save lives. Please, take care of yourself, because the world needs you in it. Your family needs you in it. I'll see you in the next story. And I really hope you still be listening to your body when I do.